Have you ever wanted to get 100% in math? Or have you wondered how those people in your class who seem to get 100% without much effort are able to do it? Today I'd like to tell you a little bit about how people get 100% in math and why it might be important for you to want to get 100% in math. I'm going to start with the why, but stick around because I'm going to explain how to do it towards the end of this video, and some of the things I'm going to tell you may be a little surprising. Why is it important to get 100% in math? You might think that this would be something that is necessary if you're going forward into a career, let's say in engineering or science, and that is true. For example, if you're studying engineering, science, or business in university and you will have to take a calculus course, the profs who are teaching you calculus assume that you understand how to do algebra perfectly because it's enough of a task to be learning the calculus, and you don't want to have to also be learning how to fix your algebra at the same time. And this is why many people have a great deal of difficulty with first-year calculus. But even if you're not going into a calculus field, being able to do math perfectly is actually very important. In a previous occupation, I spent 5 years doing commercial real estate, and I remember how amusing it was to see the realtors that I worked with often bragging how poorly they did in math in high school, and then seeing them at contract time arguing with the conveyancer and doing incredible math calculations on the fly to point out why they'd been shortchanged a certain amount of money in this deal, and there's 2% over there, but that needs to be 5% over here, and all the rest. And they were really good at math. They had to be for their work. One of the most amazing arithmeticians that I've ever met in my life is actually my best friend's father, who had a grade 8 math education, but in his business had to make estimates and provide pricing on the fly and could do amazing math calculations in his head. And he had to get them right every time, because if he got them wrong, either he'd be outbid by a competitor or he would be undercharging for something and maybe taking a loss because he hasn't taken into account the price of equipment or various different components that he needed for the work he was doing. So in any business you're in your life, being able to do math quickly and accurately every time you do it is an absolutely invaluable skill. Now, it may surprise you to hear this, but I think that most students are capable of getting 100% in math. See, math is one of these rare disciplines where there are only a certain set of rules, and once you understand those rules, it's actually really difficult to do things wrong. Everything interconnects and everything works the same way every time you apply them, as long as you have the right rules and you're applying them consistently. Very often, what then prevents people from getting 100% in math? I think there are two main things. The first is a self-defeating belief. See, I think in our school system, somehow we kind of convince people that getting 100% in math is a really difficult thing. I'm not going to say that this is a healthy way to think, but when I was in school, I had two ideas in my head that motivated me to get 100%. One was that for some reason I felt that it was really important to be the best in my class at math. I have no idea why. But the second thing was, it occurred to me, as I mentioned before, that actually if I understood math, it would be very difficult for me to get math wrong, because math is a logical set of rules that apply identically every time. It may seem odd for students to think in this way. So I often give them this analogy. I say, you may think that 100% is a very difficult mark to achieve, but let me ask you something. How many times in your life have you crossed the street? And students will say, 1,000 times, a couple thousand times. And then I ask them, I say, well, how good are you at crossing the street? Are you are you an A student? Are you a B student? Give me a percent. And very often they'll say, I guess, I don't know, I'm like 90% crossing the street. I'm like, that's interesting. So if you're a 90% student at crossing the street and you've crossed the street 1,000 times in your life, that means you've been hit by a car 100 times. And of course they laugh at this. And I say, yeah, see, the truth is you're actually 100% at crossing the street, because if you fail, you die. In life, there are many things that we accept without questioning that we have to be perfect at. You have to be perfect at swimming, otherwise you might drown. You have to be perfect at crossing a road, otherwise bad things might happen. That perfection can be carried over into a subject like math. Now, what is the secret of those students who are getting 100% in math that you see in your class? You might think that they're smarter than you. The truth is, it's likely they're not, but they do have two things that you may not realize you also have. The first thing is they like math. I've asked students in here, oh, do you like math? And they often say, yeah, I kind of like math. And so I challenge them. I say, well, then if today was a holiday and you were home from school, you'd spend a couple hours this afternoon doing math for fun, maybe trying some problems. They're like, no, I wouldn't. I say, well, you don't like math. See, I like math. I actually do math for fun if I have spare time. So those students who are doing really well at math are probably doing well at math because they're doing a lot of studying you're not doing. They don't think of it as studying. They think of it as just, playing with numbers or doing Sudoku or playing chess or doing something that trains their logical ability. But it's like anything else. If you want to be really good at basketball, spend a lot of time outside with the ball taking shots and practicing your ball handling. If you want to be good at math, you need to spend time playing with numbers. It doesn't have to be with a math book doing homework, but it does need to be time spent getting to understand how math works on your own. I think in our school system, sometimes math is presented kind of like bad religion. You're told a bunch of things to do, a particular set of rituals, and you're encouraged to do them by being given an A. So as long as you repeat these particular rituals or steps, even if you don't understand why you need to do them, you're encouraged to do them. In my view, good religion and good math are all about seeking truth. So you should never do something just because these are the steps or I'm told to do it, but you should always try and seek out the reason why. As an example, when I was in grade 8, I remember being taught about the rules of algebra, and I remember being told and learning that you can solve algebra problems by isolating x. So you get x by itself on one side of the equation, and then everything is on the other side, and you're able to solve for an answer. But then in grade 10, they taught us about quadratics. And because quadratics have x squared in one place and x in another, they said, oh, well, you have to move everything over to one side and have 0 by itself. And as soon as I heard this, I thought, that's weird. That's different from what you told me before. So I'm not going to accept that. What I did while everyone else was writing their notes and I guess learning whatever the teacher was teaching them at that point, I sat down and I took a quadratic and I spent about 45 minutes trying to isolate x. And what I discovered is you can't do it. You have to bring everything to one side in order to get it into a particular form that then enables you later on to factor and solve or whatever. So what's the difference? The difference is that I am doing that every time I solve the problem, not because a teacher told me to, but because I know it doesn't work a different way. And that's what students who get 100% do. They don't rely on someone else's instruction or someone else's accreditation in order to trust them to do something. They figure out why, and so they're doing it because they understand it and they want to. So if you want to be one of those students who gets 100% in math, hopefully I've given you a little bit of idea of the motivation you should have and some of the mindset you can have to help you achieve that. There's also a video I have that I'd advise you to check out on how to do math homework.